James, we saw JB active out there at practice. How do you feel
Thank
about
you. Yeah, so you guys got to ask me anymore.
Yeah, there you go. So the offensive line depth appears to be in a good spot hitting the road here. How do you evaluate that at midseason and what his return may do for you?
Yeah, we'll see. He's missed a little bit of time, so obviously getting him back kind of in the mix and greased up and ready to go. The good thing is Vayu's played well. Excuse me, Jason Vayu. Venga's played well. So obviously, be able to evaluate that throughout the week. I think they're both going to play, so we'll see how it plays out.
James, you touched on it a bit yesterday, but how involved has Gabe Infante been in the preparation of McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr.? And if you could maybe explain a little bit, what advantage it gives you to have, these analysts that come from all different parts of the state and country.
Yeah, I understand the question. I mean, the analysts specifically, Gabe, are doing everything that they legally can do. I mean, obviously, when you're able to have some guys kind of behind the scenes that either know a staff or know a coach or know a player, it's helpful. But those guys haven't been together in 4 or 5 years. So a lot has changed since then. But yeah, obviously, whenever you have anybody on your staff that's got history with a staff or a coach or a coordinator or a player, specifically a quarterback, there's some value in that.
James, you said yesterday you have a lot of respect for Ryan Day in this program. What do you respect about Ryan?
Well, obviously, number one, the success that they've had. It's interesting because he took over a program in a very different position than I did, but still very challenging for very different reasons, if that makes sense. I always got a ton of respect for him at Big Ten meetings, just kind of how he goes about his business. He's passionate about the Big Ten Conference and what we have to do to position the conference in the best chance to be successful, competing nationally. And they've done a nice job offensively, which is what his background is. So we have a lot of people in common. Him and Frank Leonard worked together at Boston College. We just know a lot of people in common, and I respect his body of work.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Mark.
You've had the luxury of not having to play a lot of your defensive players a ton of snaps. How well does that position you going into a game like this? And then what is the balancing act between relying on your depth and maybe taking advantage of the rest that these guys have had?
Yeah, I think it helps. I don't think there's any doubt, that it helps. Now, can our starters play more reps if we choose to do that in this game? Yes. Do we have to be careful that you don't go the extreme to that and they're not used to playing that number of reps? Yeah, so I think it's kind of in the middle, if I was going to say how we're going to manage it. We haven't discussed that. Obviously, we'll do that on Thursday. But we have the ability for the starters to play a little bit more reps and the flexibility with it, but we don't want to go completely in the other extreme.
Your pass rush is ranking pretty highly in a lot of analytical kind of things. Just curious, what factors have led to that group being so successful this season?
Well, I think it's also an example of you're allowed to get better, right? And a lot of things factor into it, because I think early in the year there was some questions and concerns about that you guys had questions. So you're allowed to get better. You're allowed to, evolve and grow. I also think the way we've been able to play and get up with a lead is also helpful with that, because they get into more pass rush situations where people are behind the chains. And I think we got good players and good coaches. I think, our scheme helps that we're aggressive. Our scheme helps that we play man coverage. So typically we can get the quarterback to hold onto the ball a little bit without free access throws. I think Deion's done a really nice job as well. A combination of all of those things.
James, you mentioned, we've talked a lot about this offensive personality so far this season. And just kind of as a step back question, do you need to be a complete team with no flaws to win at the level that you want to? Or is there a path to victory outside of having every box checked?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Number one, I don't think that there's a team in the country that has every box checked. and that's college or the NFL. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. And the reality is sometimes winning and losing is based more on the matchup of your strength versus theirs, or your deficiency versus their strength. That's part of it. But nobody's got every box checked. I think that's a reality. Where I think some of the questions have been fair, and I recognize it as well, and because I harp on it all the time. The two most important stats in all of football is turnover margin and explosive play differential. Two most important stats in all of football. And I can't talk about that all the time with the team and with you, and then act like that stat's not important when it's not in our favor. Like, it don't work like that. But to your point, I still think you can win a ton of games and at an extremely high level with not checking every box.
James, in the past, we've talked about the difference between the top 25 team and a top 5 team, how that's the hardest jump, right, to get there. When you look at what it takes to beat a top 5 team, how do you evaluate something like that, and how do you go about winning those games?
Yeah, so a couple things, obviously. I think the first thing is you got to put yourself in a position to win those games. Which what I mean by that is you look at the NFL, typically those games come down to one possession games. And when you're playing two highly, ranked teams competing against each other, that's typically how it's going to come down as well. It's going to come down to a one possession game. And usually one of two things happen. Situational football is going to win the game for you, and you guys understanding how to handle situational football, whether it's 2-minute or 4-minute, the ability for you to close the game on your terms, or talent. It's very similar to, when you watch certain teams, certain games, no matter what the differential is, talent differential, people can hang around for a half. And then over time, the talent takes over. So those are the two things. And I think we have closed the gap with a lot of what people would consider the top 5 programs in the country. We have slowly chipped away at that. So we've put ourselves in a much better position. But I think it's going to come down to a one possession game, and we got to be able to find a way to win that situation at the end of the game, whatever it is, 4-minute, 2-minute, whatever it may be. We got to be able to capitalize that situation on the road in a tough environment.
How important is player-led leadership in a game like this? What do you expect people like Don DeLuca to tell the rest of the people on the team to be ready to make sure they're ready for Saturday?
I think it's really important, because obviously, those veterans in games like this, the younger, inexperienced players that have not been in these type of environments or these type of games before, they're looking to lean on the coaches. They're looking to lean on the veteran players. And the reality is confidence comes with preparing well, but it also comes with experience, and those guys have it. So, our most veteran players, our best leaders, our best players, they need to play. They need to play well in these types of games. We don't have to play perfect, but we need to play well in these types of games.
Can you describe the physical abilities you've seen from Theo and Tyler when it comes to run blocking? And I know you said yesterday that Tyler was your guys' player of the game on offense. How much of what he did in that realm on Saturday kind of lent itself up?
Yeah, I think our tight end room is as good as any tight end room in the country. Just kind of like we talked about the pass rush, we talked about early in the season, the tight ends production wasn't, what maybe people thought it should have been, and that's changed. So you're allowed to get better as the season goes on. But those guys have done a great job, and you guys have heard me talk a bunch about having complete tight ends, which is something that we work very hard at. I think it's harder than it's ever been because most of these guys don't come in with any of that experience. It's kind of like our discussion yesterday about about throwing checkdowns or throwing the long ball. What are you doing in the backyard with your dad? What are you doing with your buddies? It's the same way with tight ends. You think tight ends are blocking a blocking sled in their backyard or out with their buddies? No, they're catching balls and running routes. So spending enough time working on that so that they can help us be successful and win at the highest level, but also prepare those guys for the next level. And one of the things that we talk about all the time with the next level and development at the tight end position is if you're just a receiving tight end, there's going to be a number of teams that want you, but not every team. If you're just a blocker, there's going to be a number of teams that want you. But if you can do both, all 32 teams want those guys. We need that at our level, but it also is going to help them long term as well to buy into that and invest in that.
James, last Wednesday when we were in this setting, you were very complimentary about your practice performance from the team, and you also looked back after that win over UMass and credited some of that to the practice week. How were you kind of feeling about the performance thus far through a couple days here?
Yeah, I just said it again. I just said it again. I think, we got some guys that if we didn't have really good depth and really good health, would be playing for us right now, in a top 10 program as true freshmen. So the fact that those guys are not full-time maybe on the D squad, but they're rotating back and forth, it's been really good. It's been really competitive. There's some guys that maybe weren't ready at the beginning of the season that I think are more ready now, at least physically. And the way they're practicing and competing, it forces our guys to come to work every single day. The more days we can put together like that, especially on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it gives us the best chance to prepare for what the speed and the violence is going to be like on Saturday. Combine that with the good-on-good periods we have as well. I think it's the best way to give us a chance to be prepared on Saturday and play well.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.